We use computers all day, every day. They're on our desks, in our pockets, even at the gas station. But even though we're all pros at using them, most of us have no idea about the really simple ways they're all categorized. So let's pull back the curtain a bit.
All right, let me ask you something. What in the world does your sleek, high-tech laptop have in common with that clunky machine you use to pump gas? I mean, on the surface, it feels like they're from two totally different planets, right?
Well, the short answer is they're both computers. But the real answer, the more interesting one, is that they belong to completely different families of computers. And once you understand these categories, the whole world of tech starts to make a lot more sense. So here's what we're going to cover. We'll start with the three main ways to classify any computer. Then we'll dig into each one, what type it is, how big it is or its size, and what it's built for, its purpose. And then we'll wrap up with why knowing this stuff is actually pretty useful. Okay, so let's get into it. Any computer you can think of, whether it's on your wrist or it takes up an entire room, can be understood using one simple three-part framework. And here it is. It's really this easy. First, we look at its type, which is basically how it thinks. Then, we look at its size, which tells us about its physical scale and raw power. And finally, its purpose. What job was it designed to do? Type, size, and purpose. Simple, right? All right, let's kick things off with type. This is all about the nuts and bolts, It's about the kind of data a computer is built to handle and how it crunches that information. First up, we've got the analog computer. The best way to think about this one is as a measurement machine. It deals with continuous, flowing data, things that are always changing, like the speed of your car or the pressure in a pipeline. And the way it shows you the results? It's usually something like a wavy line on a graph. And then we have the one we all know and love, the digital computer. This is the machine that speaks in numbers, specifically those famous binary zeros and ones. It takes in information, chops it up into digits, and gives us a nice, clean, precise number as the result. Your phone, your PC, they're all digital. And you can really see the difference right here. An analog computer might give you this fluctuating wave that you have to kind of interpret. A digital computer just tells you it's 72 degrees. Bam. Clear, simple, and totally exact. So, what if you could get the best of both worlds? Well, that's exactly what a hybrid computer does. It's a combination of the two. It uses an analog part to do the continuous measuring, and a digital part to show us the result in plain, easy-to-read numbers. And that gas pump is the perfect example. As you're filling your tank, there's an analog system inside that's measuring the continuous flow of fuel. But that screen you're staring at, watching the numbers tick up, that's the digital system, turning that flow into a number for liters and a price. That's a hybrid computer right there in the wild. Okay, so that's type. Now let's move on to our second category, size. And this one is pretty straightforward. It's all about physical scale and processing power, from something that fits in your hand to a machine that literally needs its own building. We'll start with the one we all have at home, the microcomputer. You probably just call it a PC, a personal computer. It's the smallest of the bunch, designed for one person to do everyday stuff, like writing documents, making presentations, or just typing away. Taking a step up, we get to the minicomputer. Now, this is bigger than a PC, and it's got more horsepower, usually because it has multiple processors inside. You're not going to find one of these in a living room. These are the workhorses for places like banks or hospitals that have to juggle a lot more data for a lot more people. And we keep climbing. Next up is the mainframe. These are even bigger and way, way faster than mini-computers, just packed with microprocessors. They're built for one thing: speed. Think of large scientific organizations that are crunching massive amounts of data and need answers like yesterday. And finally, at the very top of the mountain, is the supercomputer. This is the absolute biggest and fastest of them all. We're talking about speeds that are almost hard to measure. A machine like the Param 10,000 can easily fill an entire room and is built for the most mind-bendingly complex jobs you can imagine, where getting an answer in seconds is absolutely critical. So if we lay it all out, you can see a really clear pattern. As you go from a microcomputer all the way up to a supercomputer, the physical size gets bigger, the speed just skyrockets, and the job it does goes from simple personal tasks to gigantic problems that need answers right now. Okay, on to our final classification, purpose. This one is maybe the simplest of all. It's not about what's inside or how big it is, it's about the job it was built to do. Is it a jack of all trades, or is it a master of one specific thing?
Your laptop is the classic general-purpose computer. You can write an essay on it, then edit some photos, play a game, and then browse the web, all on the same machine. But a special-purpose computer is designed to do just one thing, and do it perfectly. Think about the computer that controls the brakes in your car, or, yep, the one running that gas pump. It has one critical, high-demand job, and that's all it does. So after all that, you might be asking, okay, why does any of this matter? Well, because knowing these classifications isn't just a fun fact. It's like having a new tool, a mental framework that helps you make sense of every piece of technology you see around you.
So here's the big takeaway. You can pretty much understand any computer by asking 3 simple questions. How does it think? How big is it? And what's its job? With this framework of type, size, and purpose, you now have the keys to classify just about any tech you come across. And that kind of leaves us with one last thing to think about. I mean, the smartphone in your pocket right now is more powerful than the supercomputers from a few decades ago. So as our tech keeps getting smaller and smarter at this incredible rate, will these neat little lines we've drawn even exist in another 20 years? It's a pretty interesting question.